I was supposed to surprise him with dinner. Instead, I collapsed before the pasta water boiled. It was Thursday evening, early March. The kind of cold that seeps through your boots, wraps around your knees. I'd left work early to stop by Di Bruno's for the arborio rice Nathan liked, and then took the long way home around Rittenhouse just to breathe a little. The apartment was quiet when I walked in. Not unexpected. Nathan always had back-to-back calls on Thursdays. Still, I lit the candle. He liked sandalwood and bergamot, and placed the bottle of Barolo near the counter to breathe. 10 years together. Not all of them good, but still 10. I'd only just started slicing the apples when the first pain hit. Not a cramp. A stab. Low, sharp twisting. I paused, both hands on the counter, listening to the hum of the fridge, waiting. Maybe stress. Work had been brutal lately, and I hadn't slept through the night all week. I pressed on. Garlic minced. Shallots next. I moved slowly, rhythmically, like muscle memory could hold the pain back. But then my vision tunneled. The knife clattered from my hand. I heard it before I felt it would on tile. Then the apple rolled off the counter and bumped against my sock. I reached for my phone. Nathan. Voicemail, again. My fingers trembled as I texted, cramping bad. Please call. No dots. No reply. I tried again. This time I wrote, I think something's wrong. Really wrong. My screen buzzed, but not from him. A group chat from my yoga class. Something about someone's dog. My thumb hovered. I didn't reply. I sat down slowly against the kitchen cabinet. The tiles were so cold. My jeans did nothing to stop it. My body folded in on itself like an empty envelope. A pressure rose in my ears, and I fought to stay conscious. I dialed 911. My voice cracked halfway through the address. The paramedics arrived faster than I expected. One of them, a woman, tall, calm, asked me my name 3 times before I could say it. I remember trying to smile. She said something about blood pressure fluids. I don't recall most of it. What I do remember is the moment they slid the stretcher down the hallway. I caught a glimpse of our wedding photo on the entry shelf. We were smiling. Nathan had just said something to make me laugh. He wasn't looking at the camera, he was looking at me. I think he'll come. I whispered, though no one had asked. No one answered. The paramedic at my side pressed a blanket around my shoulders and turned to her radio. Still no contact with emergency next of kin. We're trying again now. I started, but the edges of the hallway blurred. My husband. That was the last thing I said before the elevator doors closed. I woke to the steady rhythm of beeping monitors. There was a line in my arm, a dull ache in my hip, and the faint antiseptic scent of hospital linens. What struck me most, though, was the silence. No murmured voices. No familiar scent of his cologne. No Nathan. I blinked, trying to make sense of the IV drip above me. My mouth felt like cotton. When I finally managed to tilt my head, I saw the empty chair next to my bed. Beige vinyl. Still perfectly upright. A nurse with graying curls and kind eyes walked in, holding a chart. Good morning, sweetheart. You're at Penn Presbyterian. Surgery went well. You gave us a little scare yesterday. I tried to speak. My throat caught. Don't force it, she said gently. We've got fluids coming in. You'll feel better soon. I nodded slowly. Then mouthed husband. She glanced at the empty chair. We called twice. Left a message. A beat. He hasn't shown. I turned away. Looked out the window. The sky was a flat, pale gray Philadelphia in March, where the sun shows up mostly out of habit. Somewhere below, the city was moving, people rushing to meetings. Delivering flowers. Visiting loved ones. No one was rushing here. Margaret, his mother, had called yesterday morning before everything went sideways. I remembered her voice, clipped and vaguely annoyed. Again with the dramatics, Lauren, just lie down with a tea bag. Then a click. The nurse returned with a tray and a different man in a lab coat. He was tall, maybe in his 50s, with tired eyes and a clipped, polite smile. Mrs. Halston, he asked. Yes, I whispered. I'm Dr. Myers. I handled your procedure. Everything went as expected. You'll be sore, but you're stable. He paused, then reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a slim sealed manila envelope. This is a bit unusual, he said. A woman came by this morning. Left this with the nurse's station. She said to give it to you, but only if your husband didn't come. My fingers hesitated before taking it. The paper was thick, high quality, not something you grab from a desk drawer. Dr. Myers offered a small nod and stepped out. I sat up slowly, letting the envelope rest on my lap. My pulse quickened as I tore the seal open with shaking hands. Inside was a single photograph. My heart stopped. It was a wedding photo. But not mine. Nathan stood in a gray suit I'd never seen before, smiling not politely, not his press photo grin, but genuinely. Deeply. The way he used to look at me before work took over everything. Before the silence became our daily soundtrack. Beside him stood a woman. Younger than me. Elegant. Auburn hair pinned in a perfect chignon. Eyes locked on his as if nothing else in the world mattered. They looked married. Truly married. My hands trembled. Below the image, in careful cursive ink, were 7 words, "For when you're ready to see the truth." I couldn't breathe. I stared until the lines blurred, until the edges of the photograph felt like they might cut me. Nurse Monica reappeared. She must have seen the look on my face because she moved without asking, placing a warm hand on my shoulder. Some people, she said softly, just don't show up when it counts. I nodded faintly, unable to answer. My throat had closed again. As she adjusted the IV tubing, I turned the photo over. On the back, in that same cursive hand, was one word. Evie. She wasn't dead, she just disappeared. I stared at the photo in my lap like it might change if I blinked enough times, but it didn't. That same elegant woman. That same look Nathan used to give me. Evie. Genevieve Langford. The name felt oddly familiar, not just from the photo. From somewhere else, soft, recent, unsettling. And then it came back. Earlier that week, in the elevator. I had been coming back from a checkup, dragging my purse and a grocery bag with pre-chopped vegetables and ginger ale. The woman had stepped in silently. She wore a green wool coat. Her auburn hair tucked into a silk scarf. She glanced at me, and there was something in her gaze: recognition. Pity. When the doors opened, she had turned and touched my elbow gently. "Take care of yourself, sweetheart," she had said. Then she disappeared. Now I realized, it was her. Evie. The envelope still sat on my hospital tray, its flap slightly bent from where I had opened it. Tucked beneath the photo was a folded letter, handwritten in that same graceful cursive. I unfolded it with care. My hands shook, not from weakness but from dread. The paper was thick, the ink a steady blue. "Dear Lauren, I hope you read this when you're strong enough to sit up. I've debated for months whether I had the right to write to you. But if you're reading this, it means Nathan did what I thought he might. He left you alone. Again. I was once his wife too. My name is Genevieve Langford. Most people called me Evie. You probably never heard of me, not the real version anyway. 4 years ago, I collapsed in my kitchen. No warning, no known cause. I hit my head. The fall put me in a minimally conscious state. That's the medical term for it. For a while, I was trapped between sleep and something worse. I paused. My heart was racing, the steady hospital monitor catching every uneven thump. Nathan visited me 3 times. The first, he brought tulips. The second, he didn't stay more than 5 minutes. The third, he brought paperwork. Power of attorney. Transfer authorization. A week later, I was moved to a cheaper long-term care facility in New Jersey. 2 months after that, he filed for divorce on the grounds of irreversible incapacity. I never saw him again. I felt cold. Not the kind from tile floors or Philadelphia air. The kind that starts in your spine and creeps toward your skin. She was me. Just a few years ahead. I kept reading even as my vision blurred. When I began to regain clarity, months of fog, of therapy, of disbelief, I chose not to reach out. I wanted to understand how someone I once trusted with my life could abandon it so easily. And then I found out about you. The pen strokes here grew tighter, like the words had been forced through clenched teeth. You looked kind. Tired but kind. I followed you home once. I know how that sounds. But I needed to see the life he built after mine. You were carrying groceries. You paused to hold the door for a neighbor. You smiled when the man called you Mrs. Halston. I knew then what I needed to do. Not to hurt you, but to prepare you. I set the letter down for a moment, wiping my eyes with the edge of my hospital blanket. The air felt thinner, each breath more effortful than the last. This woman, she wasn't warning me out of spite. She was reaching across a chasm only someone like me could understand. I lifted the letter again. Nathan doesn't leave by accident. He waits. He waits until your body gives out, until your voice weakens. Until it's easier for him to walk away than explain. He needs you sick. Because when you're sick, you don't ask questions. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath. I'm not here to reclaim anything, not the marriage, not the man. But there's one more truth you need to hear. I won't write it here. Not in a letter that might get lost or intercepted or dismissed. If you want it, come to Cafe Luna. Monday, 2 p.m., ask for Jenna. Come alone. Evie. At the bottom of the letter, taped on carefully with yellowing adhesive, was a small sticky note. In neat cursive, just one word, Evie. My hand trembled. I turned it over, then turned it back again. The silence of the room returned, broken only by the soft beep of monitors, the shuffle of a nurse's shoes outside my door. A name once forgotten. A woman once presumed dead. Now standing like a mirror held to my own life. Somewhere between panic and peace, I whispered into the empty room, I think I already met her. The elevator. The coat. The voice. Take care of yourself, sweetheart. It was her. It had always been her. And suddenly I knew I would go. I spotted her instantly. Table by the window. Leather gloves off. One hand resting on a porcelain teacup like she had all the time in the world. She wasn't dressed like a lawyer, no blazer, no tote full of files. Just a moss green sweater, jeans that fit too well to be accidental, and hair pulled back in a way that made me feel underdressed. She looked up, nodded once, and gestured toward the seat across from her. Lauren, she said. Like she already knew me. I'm Jenna Moss. Evie's friend. Her voice was low, measured. Not cold, just unhurried. I sat down slowly, still trying to catch up with the reality of sitting across from someone who just days ago had only existed on a yellow sticky note. Outside, a sharp spring wind rattled the window pane. Inside, the cafe hummed with the clink of teacups and soft jazz spilling from a wall speaker. Jenna pushed a menu toward me, but I shook my head. I wasn't hungry. I was barely stable. She didn't push. I know this is a lot, she began. Evie thought you deserved clarity. Not revenge. Not confrontation. Just truth. Her fingers moved swiftly, retrieving a small leather folder from her bag. She opened it like it was a ritual. Inside, papers. Stamps. Signatures. I'm not just her friend, Jenna said. I'm her legal executor. And for the last 9 months, Nathan's unofficial confidant. That made me blink. He thought I was a financial strategist, she added with a faint smile. One of his new, smart connections. She tapped the documents. He shared access to his estate planning, investment accounts, even his long-term care proxies. My stomach turned. Jenna flipped a few pages, then laid one flat between us. This, she said, is where it begins to sting. She pointed at a section titled Medical Risk Assessment Spousal Designation. There in Nathan's handwriting was my name. Next to it, high dependency likelihood. Poor long-term health prognosis. Financial liability anticipated. I stared at the words. They didn't move. They didn't blink. I had spent 7 years believing I was his partner, his equal. I cooked for him. I moved cities for him. I agreed to fewer children, no dogs, less travel, all in the name of stability. He'd filed me under risk. Jenna let the silence hang. Then she leaned in tone, still gentle. You weren't overlooked, Lauren. You were. Accounted for. I looked up, eyes burning. And Evie. She was processed the same way. Quietly moved to a cheaper facility, declared inaccessible. I didn't know what to say. The waitress passed by. Jenna lifted her cup. Another chamomile, please. Then she turned back to me. There's more. She slid her phone across the table. The screen was paused mid-voicemail. I thought you might want to hear how he described you to his legal advisor. She tilted her head. Calm. Collected. But in her eyes, I saw it, not pity. Not triumph. Something quieter. Recognition. She had been here too. He didn't say, "How are you?" He said, "Why can't I access my accounts?" That was the first thing out of his mouth. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I heard what happened." Just panic. Controlled, entitled panic. I was standing in the kitchen, still in my robe. The morning light hit the countertop like it didn't know what had broken here. Coffee sat untouched. My laptop blinked on idle. The sealed folders Jenna brought over last night waited beside it like unopened futures. She was with me. Calm as ever, cross-legged on my couch reviewing documents with the same ease most people read menus. Play it, I said. Jenna tapped her phone. Nathan's voice filled the room, casual, dismissive. She cries, wolf, okay, anxiety, stress, fatigue. I've seen it before. They build these dramatic narratives because they don't want to admit it's all in their head. I didn't flinch. I had already heard it, but now it played in stereo. The voice of a man who thought logic was a weapon and compassion a weakness. Jenna paused the recording. He said that 2 weeks before your collapse, she added quietly. I nodded. And then, his name flashed on my phone. Nathan Mobile. Jenna raised an eyebrow. Would you like me to? No, I said. Put him on speaker. She did. His voice came through tight and sharp. Nathan Halston. I need to speak to someone now. There's a legal hold on my primary account. I'm being blocked from 2 of my trusts, and who the hell is listed as co-signer on the 319 property? Jenna didn't answer. So I stepped forward. It's me, I said. Silence. Then Lauren, yes. Your wife. Still. The one you left on the operating table. Another pause. A longer one. He recovered quickly. I was in Denver. I told you I had a summit. You didn't tell me anything. I cut in. You left a voicemail. 2 hours after I was wheeled into surgery. Jenna muted the line briefly. You don't have to do this, she offered. I shook my head. Number I do. I unmuted. Let me make something clear, I said. Every cent that's been moved was legal. Every action documented. Every signature witnessed. He started to speak, but I tapped open the banking app on my phone. My name. My balance. $247,000. Liquid. Accessible. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. Nathan, I said softly. For once I'm not waiting for you to show up. I'm showing you the door. He sputtered. You can't do this. I let that hang in the air a beat longer than needed. Then I said it quiet, even, but each syllable weighed like granite. You already did. Jenna didn't move. Just watched me steady. I turned slightly, still holding the phone. I'm just following your template, Nathan. Remember that form, the one where you marked me high liability? I read every word. He swore under his breath. Not loud, but clear. That wasn't personal, no, I said. It was strategic. Cold. Documented. Just like this. I stepped toward the window, the light catching the edge of the sealed folder. I've learned something these past few days, I continued. You don't destroy people with fists or fire, you drain them slowly. With silence, with logistics. with absence dressed up as duty. He exhaled. It wasn't regret. It was calculation. What do you want? He asked. I looked at Jenna. She nodded once. Nothing, I said. That's the difference. You want something. You always do. Access. Reputation. Applause. I picked up the sealed folder. It had my name now. Not his. I just want peace. And you don't live there. He started to speak again, voice sharper now, but I cut the call. Then I blocked the number. It was surprisingly quiet after. No chime. No buzz. Just silence. Jenna walked over, placing a second folder beside mine. Settlement from Evie, she said. It's clean. Pre-cleared. Taxed and titled. I nodded. We figured you'd need a head start. I touched the edge of the folder. The paper inside didn't hum or burn. It just sat there. Solid. Real. Mine. You left me empty. I whispered aloud even though the call was long gone. Now I'm leaving you with nothing. She poured the tea like it was something sacred. No rush. No noise. Each movement steady, deliberate, quiet as breath. I watched her hands. They were smaller than I remembered from the photos. Not fragile, weathered, purposeful. Like someone who'd fought something invisible and won. Evie slid the porcelain cup toward me. Steam curled upward, catching sunlight from the tall windows behind her. I didn't speak, not yet. The quiet was warm. Healing. Jenna sat nearby, organizing papers into 2 neat stacks. Legal folders. Not urgent anymore. This table, Evie finally said, was my grandmother's. She served cider here every Thanksgiving. I nodded, sipping slowly. Outside the porch doors, climbing roses brushed the glass with each breeze. Late May in Chestnut Hill was like a storybook, calm, blooming, slightly unreal. We hadn't spoken about Nathan yet, not directly. But the files were there. And we all knew what they meant. Evie reached beside her chair and pulled a bakery box onto the table. I wasn't sure if you liked apples, she said gently. My chest tightened. That memory me in the kitchen weeks ago. The apple falling, the knife slipping. My body giving out quietly as dinner burned behind me. I looked down. The pie was warm, spiced, homemade. I do, I whispered. Thank you. She cut 2 slices, plated them with the same careful grace. He used my name to buy your apartment, Evie said. Signed it over when he needed leverage years ago. I didn't blink. She pushed a page toward me. It's yours now, fully. The title's clean. I ran a hand over the edge of the paper. He doesn't get to keep what he used to hurt people. Jenna added softly. His remaining accounts are frozen. He's been fired from his firm misuse of client funds, personal loans against company stock. I nodded once. He tried to call his mother, but she won't answer, Jenna continued. She thinks he's in Europe. We didn't laugh. It wasn't funny. Not really. I placed my fork down, hands resting on the linen napkin. What happens to men like him? I asked. Evie tilted her head. They don't fall, she said. They hollow. Slowly. From the inside out. I thought about that for a long time. Then Jenna handed me a final page, restraining order. Notarized, no ceremony, just clarity. I didn't hesitate, I signed. When I stood to leave, Evie followed me to the porch. The air was cooler now. Faint scent of roses and stone. We didn't hug, that wasn't who we were. But I touched her shoulder. And she placed her hand over mine. You saved yourself, she said. I stepped outside, closed my eyes for a second, and let the quiet wrap around me like new skin. Then I opened the door, walked down the steps, and turned toward the light. It didn't end with him, it started with me. I didn't walk away from him because I was angry. I walked away because I finally saw what staying had cost me. Sometimes healing doesn't look like forgiveness, it looks like reclaiming what was quietly taken. And strength isn't loud. It sits at a table, signs the papers, and chooses peace over proving anything. In this life, we don't always get the closure we deserve, but we can still write our own ending with grace. If you've ever had to rebuild your life from silence, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment or share this with someone who might need a quiet reminder. You're not alone, not now, not ever. And if this story stayed with you, there's more waiting. Just hit subscribe and come sit with us for the next one.